G'day Bodgies and Widgies and welcome back to the channel. Today is finally the day where I give you a full rundown of my brand new 6 foot 1,500 litre freshwater aquarium. Now this might not be the biggest tank that you've seen on YouTube, nor does it have the craziest stocking, but I have put in my blood, sweat and tears to get this aquarium to where it is today, and it's a pretty big achievement for me that I wanted to share with you Bodgies and Widgies of this channel. Now, if you end up enjoying this video, then feel free to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel as well to see the whole future of this aquarium. But I say enough talking, and let's have a full run through of this beautiful freshwater display. Okay, so the fish room is still under setup, so I do apologize for the glare. I've got these two absolutely obnoxious huge glass panels that are just letting in so much natural sunlight. It's great for the fish, they look awesome, but we will have to deal with a little bit of glare before the blinds go up. But let's go through an overall rundown of specs on this system. So this is 6 feet long or 180 centimeters long, 2.5 feet or 75 centimeters wide, and 3 feet or 90 centimeters tall. Overall, the entire system volume, including the filtration, is about 1,500 liters or 250 gallons. And for me, that's probably the biggest aquarium that I've ever had. So in this fish room, I really wanted to have a big, beautiful display native Australian aquarium, and that's how this system came to be. Originally in its place, I was gonna put a big fiberglass pond, probably bigger than the actual system that this is. However, after a little bit of thinking, I definitely wanted something that is really nice, display worthy, and that's where I spent probably about 3 times more money than I needed to in getting this aquarium here. So what we'll do is go top down, and we'll start off with the pretty much the false hood that I have on this aquarium. It conceals all of the lighting and the sliding doors or sliding lids that I have on the tank, which is really great for keeping the evaporation and the fish inside the system, because when we get into the fish, you'll notice that some of them do have the tendency to just clear straight out the aquarium. Now this tank will eventually end up housing my 3 native Australian lungfish once they reach the 15 to 20 centimeter mark. Right now they are like the size of a finger, and they do need to definitely put on a bit more size before they go into this aquarium. But in terms of lighting so far, it's pretty simple. The entire aquarium is lit by a 120 centimeter long Chihiros WRGB2, and I say simple, it's a pretty beefy and pretty damn expensive light. I've had it for a few years now, and it does a really great job of lighting this tank. Although eventually I do want to upgrade the lighting, and you know, the dream would be something like a trio of Kessels. I do want to get something that will just pack a bit more punch into this aquarium, especially because I do want to get some live plants in here. So lighting upgrades are to come, but for now, the Chihiros WRGB dude does a pretty good job, and the fish look amazing under it. Alright, so let's talk about the glass box itself, and this is an absolutely stunning build. It is ultra low iron glass, which means it's crystal clear, and the silicone work on it is absolutely immaculate. Now, to get technical inside the actual aquarium, on this side of the build here, we've got the overflow chamber, and this is where water is flowing down into my sump filtration. And then over on this side of the tank is where that water gets shot right back out. And you'll notice that fancy little gadget there. It's a pretty cool talking point whenever people have come and seen the aquariums or just seen videos of it on my social media. They always ask what it is, and I know that I'm gonna get questions about it. So that is specifically something that I went out of my way to purchase. It is sold at New Life Keysborough Aquarium in Melbourne, but they also do obviously sell online. And if you're anywhere around the world and you're looking to get that, any place that stocks Sanking flow color plumbing should be able to get that for you. And it's essentially pretty simple. It's a set of elbows that are connected to a T, which is then on a ball bearing, and depending on how extreme you set the angles, it causes the water returning to just spin around on a swivel. It's super cool, and it just adds really nice dynamic into the aquarium. It's really relaxing to watch as well, and I just think it's a pretty cool flex and talking point like I mentioned. But that is rotating and sending water pulsing through the system. And for some additional flow, I also have the brand new Jabao DCMP 40, which is on that side of the tank. And that's just causing this whole circular motion of water going through the aquarium. The DCMP 40 right now, as far as I'm aware, is only sold through AliExpress, and it should be hitting Australia sometime soon, but it's a really cool, cost-effective alternative to the super popular Ecotech Marine MP series of wave makers, but this is a fraction of the cost. It's absolutely silent, and I will have a proper review video of it coming out soon. But if you are looking at getting a really cool wave maker for your aquarium, I'll link where I purchased this in the description down below, and it arrived in pretty good condition as well, so I reckon it's worth the purchase. Now, for an aquarium of this magnitude, I know that the Aquascape looks super basic. I completely agree, and I'm still working on it. The aquarium I want to get absolutely chock-a-block full of live plants, because by the time I add the Australian lungfish into this aquarium, which will be 1 or 2 years from now, the plants will have had plenty of time to really establish, get their roots in, and just be growing like nuts. And I've already got an absolute ton of plants on order coming for this tank very, very soon, so that'll be a fun video to look out for. But in terms of the hardscape, I think that's pretty much set in stone. It is set in stone, but I'm pretty happy with the way that it is. The driftwood in this aquarium was all just foraged off the farm. It's all just deadfall, dry eucalyptus, so the second it went into the aquarium, it absorbed water like no tomorrow, and it is perfectly safe to have in the tank. The substrate is just about 40 kilos of natural dark gravel, and there's also just some red river stones in there to create a little bit of habitat for the smaller fish, but also just to keep things locked in place. The fake Vallisneria I did originally add because of concerns that the lungfish would eat the plants, but now that we've got a lot of time for real plants to grow, that Vallisneria is going to come out of the aquarium. I'm not a big fan of it. I thought it would look a lot cooler than it does, but it's just so bright and fluoro and green that it doesn't look natural at all, and it's not my sort of vibe to keep in aquariums. But now is where I want to get your input on something pretty major that I want to do with this tank. Now, the overflow that I have in this system actually allows me to run the tank at about 60% capacity, which means I could fill it up to about here, and the sump, all the equipment, everything like that would work perfectly fine. I would have to drop the return a little bit lower so it's not just creating a waterfall in the tank. But what I'm trying to get at is we can create a really cool looking paludarium vibe in this aquarium. Because of the way that I've got all the driftwood pretty much in the upper portion of the tank, I can lock in a whole bunch of cool subaquatic plants that can grow in an almost immersed sort of way. Things like peace lilies, pothos, bromeliads, and all of those cool plants that you see in aquariums where the leaves are just growing up and out of the water to really create this jungle sort of look, we can pull off in this aquarium. So I want to get your thoughts on that, on whether it's a good idea, whether you think it'll look good, and if you do think it's a good idea, definitely make sure that you let me know in the comment section down below, because the more and more I've been thinking about it, the more and more I want to pull the trigger, but I just want to get the majority consensus before I actually make that happen. Okay, so now let's have a look at some of the fish. I'll start off with the non-native fish first, because some of them are only in here temporarily and some of them have been added in here as cleanup crew. Now, when I first completed the cycle of this aquarium, there were so many fresh nutrients, and all of the natural sunlight that I get caused a whole bunch of hair algae to grow throughout the system. There was so much of it, and it was just caked all over the glass, the hardscape, everywhere. And I'm always quick to jump to the biological control before I reach out for the chemical control. And I picked the best algae eater that I know, the humble Cassoreus orotus, the goldfish. I went to my local pet store, which is primarily for horse goods where I live, and they have a small aquarium section, which is actually pretty handy for any sort of emergency pickups like dechlorinator and whatnot. But they had a tank with some goldfish, and I picked 3 of the most basic bronze looking goldfish to go into here. Mind you, once again, they are temporary, but they went in here, and within about 72 hours, they cleaned the entire tank spick and span from hair algae. But I knew that I needed a bit more of a permanent solution, and so that's where I reached out to the invertebrates. I put in a handful of ram's horn snails, some Malaysian trumpet snails, and bladder snails, along with some live blackworms that went into the substrate system, just to act as detritivores and some forage for the fish, but they'll eat up any of that uneaten food and detritus that settles between the cracks of the gravel. After that, I had to go for another fish that I could permanently keep in here that would also act as a bit of biological control. And I reached out for the Crossichellis oblongus, which is the Siamese algae eater. They went into here and I got a group of 5, and they've been doing a great job of just cleaning up the substrate and the hardscape of any new strands of hair algae that develop. And finally, we've got the largest fish in this system, which is my Semiprochellotus insignis. Yeah, Semiprochellotus insignis, which is my flagtail Prochellotus. This fish is definitely not going to stay in here. It is going into my South American display, which is currently under construction. There'll be a video of that coming out very soon. But this is a fish that came with me from the previous fish room. I've had it for quite a long time now, and it was just way too big for my small 10-gallon holding tanks. So it went into here after it completed a very brief period of quarantine, like all the other fish did, and it'll get moved out probably within the next week once that tank gets filled up and cycled. Now we get into the more permanent residents, and they are the 3 different species of native Australian fish. So I was deciding on what native Australian fish I wanted to put into this tank first, not because it was any sort of, important sentimental thing. I was just sort of thinking, what am I going to bite the bullet on getting first? And I picked probably the most basic native Australian fish that is quite often used as feeders in this country, and it is none other than the Hypsodonotris galley. I definitely butchered that, but it is the fire-tailed gudgeon. This fish, like I mentioned, is very commonly sold across Australia as a live feeder fish, and there's nothing all that spectacular about them, but I really like them. They're super small, probably max out at about 3.5 to 4 centimeters, and they have this just basic muddy brown color. But the males develop these really bright, fiery red fins, and what I love is just the attitude they have. They're these little stocky, boisterous fish that set up little territories around the rockwork, and the fact that they're the smallest fish in this system will just make sure that they're eating all of those smaller particles of food that settle towards the bottom of the tank. But I just think they're cool. They hop around the bottom of the tank and they're an adorable little fish. Now, the second species of native Australian fish that went in here was another species of gudgeon, and it is the Mongoonda adspersa, which is the southern purple spotted gudgeon, the Uchi Creek purple spotted gudgeon to be exact in terms of where these fish are from locality wise. This is a fish that I've wanted for a very long time, but I just never really bit the bullet on getting, but I knew it was a must-have for this aquarium. As a matter of fact, the purple spotted gudgeon, the southern purple spotted gudgeon specifically, was once declared extinct until a small population of them was found out in the wild. They were brought into captivity, bred, and now there's a whole bunch of different redistribution programs where captive bred ones are being re-released into their native habitat. But us as aquarists can also choose to keep this species alive in our very own aquariums. They're actually spending a lot of time, surprisingly, in all portions of the water column. That entire 3 foot of depth, you can find a gudgeon in at any point in time. As a matter of fact, oh yeah, there we go. There's one right up the top there towards driftwood. It's awesome. I got really worried that I wouldn't be able to see one, but yeah, they're in all parts of the aquarium and I absolutely love the way that they look. And last but definitely not least is my school of rainbow fish. These are a group of, I think 12 or 13 Rhodonocentris ornatus, also known as the Obi Creek rainbow fish. There's just 2 obbies in there. Obi Creek rad rainbow fish. There's a few different rainbow fish variants that come from that area, but these are the blue Rhodonocentris. I believe they also come in orange. When they're mature, they look totally stunning. These ones will have a really cool blue sheen all the way through them. They're really small now, so a lot of these fish aren't gonna have the maximum potential of color that you'll see once they reach maturity. So these are going to be a slow burner. They'll take a little bit of time to grow, but once they reach maturity, they're going to look totally stunning. The tank, however, still does look a little bit bare, and these 3 native Australian species are definitely not the last species that I'm going to add. There's still so many different fish on the cards. I'd like to potentially put in a school of obese catfish, maybe a golden eeltail catfish, a whole bunch of different rainbow fish species, like a bunch, as many as I can collect really, and also things like scats, argents, archerfish. They're all on the cards. So if you are breeding any native Australian fish or you're looking to sell some that would be suitable in this aquarium, definitely make sure that you reach out to me either on Facebook, Instagram, or Discord, all 3 of which will be linked in the description down below. Okay, so now it is time we jump into the engine room of the aquarium, which is engine room. The engine room of my aquarium, which is the sump filtration system. This was pretty much my first ever tank with a sump, and I really did go all out. I knew that all the equipment and the way that I laid the sump out would pretty much be here to stay for a good few years, so I kind of went with the best that I could. To explain the way that a sump works, water flows down the overflow pipe and then goes straight through my UV sterilizer. The clean water with only the sort of finer particles and floating stuff flows into my fine filter wool mat. That then trickles down 2 layers of sponges and then finally goes into the biological filtration. A majority of the biological filtration is handled by, I think, over 100 vacuum rods split between 2 different chambers. And these are often the rods you see in koi pond filters. And then we enter the next 2 chambers, and these are the, one of them is the chemical chamber, as I like to call it. And in here, I've got a bag of activated carbon for water polishing, and there's also a basket of coral rubber, which will act as a good pH buffer, whilst also slowly adding in trace minerals back into the tank. And then finally, the next chamber is almost empty. I say almost because I have a massive red claw yabby that lives in here, and he does an amazing job of keeping my sump clean and turning over any detritus that settles. He's also just a cool pet to have. I'm going to be decorating his main living space a lot more, but he actually wanders through the entire sump. The first 4 baffles, he has complete free range over, and he's got little dens through all of them, but he primarily lives in this section. And finally, the water then passes through 3 filter socks and enters my return chamber. In here, I've got a Jabao 10,000 litre return pump. That's only running at 50% though. And there's also a 500 watt Aqua One titanium heater, which also displays the temperature. There's a glass heater in there, which I turned off because it's pretty much not doing anything. The titanium heater does all of the heating that I need in this tank, but the glass one is in there just as a backup, I guess. So Bodgies and Widgies, that is pretty much everything that this aquarium has to offer. Now, I did want to give a massive shout out to my local aquarium store, Aquatico Aquarium, because they were the people that built this custom aquarium for me. I probably went through, I don't know how many different design changes and questions and queries about things that I wanted to do with this aquarium, and they were so accommodating in helping me through the entire process, understanding what would be the most cost effective in terms of sizing, how the manufacturing process works, the time frames, and everything like that just made this whole journey so much more easier than I could have thought, even when I was dealing with a whole bunch of other things on the side. So they really were able to create a beautiful aquarium that's going to stand the test of time and really be here for the next few years through my videos and be the real centerpiece of my journey of keeping aquariums and this whole fish room. So if you are after a custom built aquarium or an aquarium off the shelf that features all of these different features that my aquarium has, then definitely make sure you reach out to Aquatico Aquarium, because no matter where you are in Australia, they can manufacture an aquarium to your needs and have it delivered out to you. It's so good, and I could not have asked for a better aquarium in this place. So Bodgies and Widgies, although the tank is completely hands off right now, like I mentioned earlier, blood, sweat and tears really did go into getting this aquarium to where it is. And I probably wouldn't have had the determination to get an aquarium like this if it wasn't for all of the support that you've been giving me through all of these years watching these videos. I think I probably spent close to $10,000 on this system with the exact position of where it is now with the equipment and the scape and just all of the features I added to the tank. But all of that is worth every single penny because I enjoy it and I really hope you do as well. If you want to support this channel, then you have the option of subscribing so you can see all of the future videos that are coming out. And if you wanted to see a whole behind the scenes process of me bringing this aquarium to this fish room and some of the trials and tribulations I had setting it up, then you can see that through the members only section. So through a very small fee that financially aids this channel, you're able to see a whole bunch of different behind the scenes content, stuff that I've been up to, projects I've already done that haven't hit the main channel yet. You'll be able to get a behind the scenes glimpse of. So if you want to see that and potentially help the channel just a little bit extra, you've got the option of joining that members section down below. But thank you so much for watching these videos. It really, really does mean a lot to me, just the fact that you've spent all of this time staying here until the very end. So as always, Bodgies and Widgies, stay happy, stay safe, stay Aussie Australian. Bodgie out.